Welcome to this Times Techies webinar. I'm Sujit John, and I have with me my colleague Shilpa Fadnis. The two of us will moderate the discussion. We hope you and your families are staying safe and doing well. Our discussion today is on revolutionizing OTT video streaming, and we'll have some special insights from the boom in education technology. The discussion is in association with Conviva. Conviva has been totally focused on streaming technology and analytics for over a decade. The company helps hundreds of the world's premium publishers deliver engaging, high-quality content. The discussion will focus on how technologies and analytics are ensuring that video streaming keeps viewers engaged, reduces customer churn, and drives new monetization models. To discuss this, we have three seasoned professionals. We have with us Aditya Ganjam. Aditya is co-founder and chief product officer at Conviva. As a founding member of the Conviva team, Aditya has spent his entire professional career at the company, holding progressively more key engineering roles. Most recently, he was Conviva's chief architect and led production definition, technology strategy, and new product incubation. Before joining Conviva, Aditya was a PhD student in computer science at Carnegie Mellon University, where as a member of the End System Multicast project, he contributed to the building of the world's first peer-to-peer live streaming system. Aditya is based in San Francisco and is speaking to us from there right now. It's 6:30 in the morning for him. Welcome, Aditya.
Thank you, Sujit. Thanks very much. I'm excited to be here.
We will soon have with us James Lamberti. James is the Chief Marketing Officer at Conviva. He joined Conviva in October 2020. James is an expert at helping innovative growth companies provide software and insights to marketing, advertising, research, data, R&D teams so that customers can effectively use them and he can retain customers. James has led several companies through challenging transformations, including Fortune 1000 brands such as Experian, as well as highly successful media and technology startups, including Comscore, InMobi, AdTruth, Applitools. We'll welcome James shortly. And we have with us Prakash Ramachandran. Prakash is the Chief Technology Officer at Byju. Prior to this, he worked in a range of companies. Early in his career, he worked at CDAC, then at HP, where he worked on the operating server HP OS. In 2004, Prakash joined SupportSoft, and 5 years later, he joined gaming company Zynga. It was a time when Zynga's game Farmel was all the rage, and Prakash worked to keep the infrastructure going and later was involved in gaming development too. Just prior to Byju, Prakash was with big data company Hortonworks. Welcome, Prakash.
Hi, thank you.
Those of us who are viewing this can send in the questions through the Facebook comment box. Sujit and I will put them to Aditya, Prakash, and James. We'll begin with a short presentation and we'll get into a discussion. Without much ado, over to you, Aditya.
Sorry. Okay, let me just share my screen.
Yeah. Aditya is not visible yet, huh? Aditya, can you hear us?
The screen is frozen.
Screen. Why is Aditya's screen blank? I think he's rejoining probably, no? Sorry about that. Viewers, Aditya should be joining any minute. Prakash, you've been using some of these technologies for some time now. You are using it what in your live classes and all that, is it?
Two pieces. One is that Byju started off, if you look at the history of Byju, it was mainly a offline in the sense Byju used to conduct offline classes, physical classes. In 2015, we moved to, so one of the things that he figured out was he used to actually conduct classes in multiple places. And he figured out what mattered was not somebody has to present live. If the content is engaging, if it is done in a proper way, it's perfectly fine for people to remotely attend it, right? So it has been always about the content, not whether there is a physical teacher present. 2015, we moved into a video on demand streaming. What we had was we had an app where users could subscribe to it, they can register and watch videos. And this were for grades 6 to 12. So we started with video on demand. Last year, when the pandemic started, we saw a huge growth, right? When you look at video streaming, I think India had two different moments where the video streaming jumped in market share, in the sense that, like, to be frank, right, 2015, when we had video, one of the things we noticed was people were very afraid to use your mobile connection. And that changed actually a lot the moment Jio entered, and you had suddenly, huge number of people getting access to mobile data. Right? Earlier, people used to worry, if I'm going outside, if I have to watch something when I'm traveling, I have to download from home, and that suddenly changed. And that too at probably one of the cheapest price all over the world. You're talking about how much? Around $3 per month. You can't beat that, and that too at a sufficiently good quality. So we started off with that. That's when we started with video on demand, and now we do have live classes too. From last year, where we actually have live teacher talking to the students, taking up classes. But it's kind of a mixed model, because certain kind of content creation takes time. For example, we have a lot of concepts explained through animation, etc., which a physical teacher or a live teacher will find it difficult. So we have a mixed kind of model over there. So we have both video on demand as well as live stream.
Okay. We'll come back to you, Prakash, on how you're using those technologies. Aditya, hi, welcome, James.
Hello, everybody.
Aditya, what happened?
My laptop crashed right when I was about to share. Sorry.
So we're just asking Prakash about where exactly Byju is using these technologies. Aditya, you want to start the presentation, or James will?
Yeah, maybe James is here. Why don't you start?
I'll start that. Yeah. All right. Everyone see my screen all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me get it into full cast. Great. Yeah. So I think I know you introduced us all. It's good to be here, and I appreciate the patience as I figured out my technical issues. Always fun these days virtually, right? I think what I wanted to start off with, I know you heard the stories of Byju's. The foundation on which the Byju's has built their business, this trend, I think is interesting to point out, and as a context setting opening, right? When we look at streaming growth around the world, as Conviva, we've got publishers and companies all over the world leveraging our technology, and we're able to see all the volume of traffic. What we've seen in the last 3 years is 266% growth in streaming. In many markets around the world, you have actually large format, so big screens or TVs, consumption being overtaken by streaming versus like linear behavior. And of course, I think Byju's and Prakash were able to point out how they built a business on that. What's interesting about the growth is that currently Southern Asia, this is mostly India, probably 80-90% of this data is from India, has grown 151% year over year. And the reason for this is what we saw in the growth of streaming is that it essentially followed the pandemic, right? It hit first hardest in Europe and the US. And so going back to Q4 and even Q1 of 2021, we had these 150, 170% year over year growth numbers. India, things happened a little bit different a little bit later. And so it was interesting to see how streaming growth followed this pandemic. But the most important thing about that growth is it's not relenting. We still see in most markets around the world, even as things start to settle down a little bit, double-digit growth. So this is not streaming growth is not a trend that will somehow subside or even come close to reversing, even as we hopefully emerge from the pandemic. It's a permanent change, accelerated, right, by this situation. And the other thing that I think is interesting about the Indian market in Southern Asia is the quality, right? And a lot of times, technology around the world, the mother of inventions, we say, is the need, right? And you think about Byju's seeing the opportunity to deliver education. Quality is extremely high in the region. I think by virtue of the fact that the streaming is so important, right, to some of these other regions around the world, the quality is actually higher in Southern Asia than it is in many other parts of the world. So I think this is an interesting statistic, and we'll talk later about how important quality is to viewer retention, viewer engagement. And this is really the final point here, but I talked about the growth. The key is, how do these companies, how do folks around the world unlock the growth opportunity, right? We see that advertising as well as subscriber-based models like Byju's is embracing are opening up huge economies based foundationally on streaming technology. So I know we heard from Byju's, and at this point, I know you wanted to ask maybe about the complexities of handling and managing streaming. I think Aditya can lead us off and have a quick chat about that.
Yep. Thanks, James. So when we look at streaming, the video has been measured in many ways, before streaming really came about. And you might think that it's a pretty simple thing to translate that to streaming, but it turns out to be quite complex. Now, first, before I talk about that, let me talk about some of the methods that have been used to measure. So if we go to the next slide, there have been several ways. So video has been measured using what we call beacons or pixels. These are methods to basically mark different points of video. Video started, we're halfway through, video has ended, and that can kind of generally measure video playback. Or you can use technologies, automatic content recognition technologies within smart TVs to measure what viewers are watching. And then you can have panels set up that are where a small sample of homes are being measured in terms of what they're watching. The challenge is all of these miss various aspects of the streaming. In the pixel case, you may know at the beginning, at the end, but you don't know what's happening throughout the video. You don't know what the viewer is experiencing at every point in time. If you use these smart TV ACRs, you only see one type of TV. You don't see all the others. You don't see mobile. You don't see web. You don't see actually a majority of streaming that's happening. And then when you do sampling, again, it's a very small subset. Maybe 1 out of 10,000 viewers are actually measured. So you actually miss a large part of it. And so the challenge there is, how do you get full coverage? How do you measure the diversity of streaming every second of what the viewer is seeing, and across all the different types of devices that they're seeing on? And that's one of the key challenges we've been tackling, is handling that diversity, which is very different than broadcast TV, which has been largely consistent in how video was delivered, but that's very different than streaming. The second challenge that comes up on the next slide is the fragmentation. So there are now so many different ways video is consumed on many different types of devices. Even the TV screen, there are dozens of different devices you can use to stream on a TV screen, let alone mobile devices, web-based players. And then on top of that, there are many different types of content. You have live content, long form content, short form content, social content, and they're all different forms of video that are played. And then on top of that, you have different forms of advertising. That are different technologies of advertising, more automated, programmatic versus direct sold, as well as different ways of inserting ads. So all these different forms of OTT video now make it much more complex to actually measure that. And that's really what we've been tackling all along to solve this and bring some consistency and just some simplicity to this very complex environment.
Okay.
I think we're ready for the panel discussion now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Before that, just give us an idea. Conviva has a big presence in India as well, right? As a engineering center.
Yes.
Yes, we do. We have a large engineering team. We have 3 overall sites. One of our largest ones is in India. We have roughly 80 people within that office across engineering, operations, support, solutions, and that's centered in Bangalore.
Yeah, it's actually the largest currently. So yeah, largest in the world is in Bangalore.
Okay. So tell me about, so how do you overcome the complexities of all this OTT streaming data collection? Aditya, and maybe Prakash can add to that.
Yeah, I can start there. So so our approach to measuring this is to embed software directly into the application. So we believe that we need to have software as close as possible to the viewers as we can. And the closest thing is the device that they use to stream. So it's not something upstream, not something in the network, but in the device itself. And our approach to solving this has been to embed an SDK in the app that gets installed on the device, working with content publishers like Byju's, working with Byju's, deploying our SDK into all the apps that Byju's deploys across all the devices. And that SDK is measuring, not just sending out video started, but it's actually measuring every single second of the video playback. So it sees everything happening as if it was a viewer. So it will say if the viewer experiences an experience issue like rebuffering, the video is frozen, it will see that. If the video bitrate increases or decreases, the quality decreases, it will see that. If the content changes, it will see that. If there's an ad in there, it will see that. So that's the first part of the solution, that SDK we call the stream sensor. And by deploying that into the app, it actually goes everywhere the app goes, into every single device, every smart TV and every streaming box, every mobile device, every web device. It'll get deployed through the app as the app gets deployed. And that we believe is the best way to get the largest coverage of streaming. And now you don't miss out parts of the audience, you don't miss out parts of the video, you actually can see everything. And then the second part of that is normalizing all of this, because as we talked about, there's immense fragmentation. So what we see in a Roku device is very different than what we see on an Android device or an iPhone or a Samsung Smart TV. The kind of information that we see coming from these devices in the SDKs is all different, because none of them were designed to be consistent, so they are not. So we have invested a lot on the back end to align all these different types of measurements so that we can compare the metrics. So we can say the playing duration on 2 different devices actually can be compared or is consistent. If there was a quality issue, that can be compared. So a lot of cleaning and normalization on the back end to get all this fragmented measurements into a consistent kind of normalized data model across the different types of devices. From there, then we can take action based on those. But those are the 2 core things that we do to really tackle the complexity and coverage challenges.
Okay. Prakash, you told us where exactly you're using it, but how are these technologies working for you?
So probably I'll tell you what we started doing and why we went over here, where we are, right? Like Aditya mentioned, in the beginning, we thought it's a simple problem. All I'm measuring is probably, the certain parameters, video start time, how many failures are there, when from which portion to which portion did the user actually watch, because a lot of them are pretty important for us. And especially given, and it's true for general segment, but for us, look at the younger age kids. The first technology they were exposed to was 4G, right? My younger guy doesn't even know what broadband is probably. The first thing he's getting used to is, high-speed broadband and 4G. Over there, what we figured out, we used to always measure everything else, video being core product, we started measuring it and then figured out some of the issues that Aditya was mentioning. And then we were looking at, hey, should we do it ourselves? Because how the market for engineers is, it's pretty difficult. So we wanted everybody in our team to focus purely on the core product strengths that we have. And that's where we started evaluating, third parties. And it has been pretty good, because it's not just the data collection challenges. Right? We were luckily not on all the devices, but we were primarily on Android. There itself, you will see kind of fragmentation issues. How much can I trust certain things given by the client, right from the time that it's giving me? All of those things are there. The second aspect of it is building, democratizing the data within the team. Like, how do I ensure that it's not just one person who's getting access? Can an engineer who is trying to look at some particular issue, can he get access to that? For that, we had to build different dashboards, all of that. And when I looked at all of that combined, it didn't make sense for us to spend that much time doing this. Instead, go for a third-party solution, and that's how we came across Conviva. One of the good parts is earlier it was more like we had to have some data scientist or somebody tell what is the problem. Now, almost everyone, right from the product manager to the engineer who is working on, he directly has access to that. That is one part. The second one is when issues happen, we know what we can actually pinpoint what the issue is. For example, across geographies, Bangalore, within India itself, different cities, we can see, what are the different parameters that we are interested in, how does it work over, and then take action upon it. So that's what we have been doing.
Any anecdote you can recollect, some particular thing that you discovered from using this?
Yeah, so to be frank, we used to have in a certain geography outside India, we used to have students complaining certain days, and then we actually figured out, oh, it's happening only with a particular ISP. Right? Or for example, we use multiple CDNs now with CDN based on certain issues that we figured out. We have dropped one CDN and moved on to the other based on that. I think there are much more things to do. We are not fully utilizing it, but we are, I think, in the right way to do.
Okay. If the problem is with one ISP, then what do you do? I mean, you.
Yeah. So at least knowing that problem, we could figure out what was happening over there.
Okay. You then tell the users that this is the problem, is it?
Yeah. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we could at least figure out that why it was causing it. There may be other solutions.
Yeah, I think to build on a little bit, just bring in a global perspective as well.
Aditya, collection is one challenge.
James was saying something. Shilpa, James was saying something.
Oh yeah, sorry, no problem. I just was going to add real quick. I think this debate often comes up right within engineering, this build versus buy, and I think as I think listening to what Prakash said, right, he wants his engineering team focused on building the business, right, solving for education at scale and building the business that way. This type of technology is meant to be built upon, right? And there's oftentimes this debate of build versus buy is sort of one that gets people caught up. But why would you want an engineering team like Prakash has got working on sort of standard technology that has over the last decade has been proven, right, by massive publishers and businesses all over the world? Instead, he takes that same engineering talent and he directs them at making money for the company, right, and providing consumer experience. So I think it's easy for a lot of people listening in on the technical side to think, well, this is such core technology, I have to build it internally, and it is, but it is your technology. It's inside the application. It's in your four walls. You build on top of that, and you grow business on top of that, as opposed to struggling with some of the rudimentary aspects of this that we've already solved for. So I didn't mean to cut someone else off, but I wanted to give a perspective from around the world on that issue.
Yeah, no, good you did. Yeah, Shilpa, go on.
Yeah, Aditya, coming to you, collection is one challenge, accuracy is another. What is required is not just to collect data, but to collect accurate data. If you can share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. Right. That is a big item that we run into with everyone that we work with. And we have over the 10 plus years we worked on this, come to a solution that has four different pieces to it. The first is that the first step of integrating the SDK into the player application has to be made as simple as possible. It has, and so our approach is we want to automatically collect as many of the events as possible and make the APIs as simple as possible. And we've, every year we continuously simplify that process. We learn new ways to simplify and automate more of that collection. And by doing that, we reduce any errors that can be introduced in doing that integration step. So that's one thing, make that integration as simple as possible. The second is that will never be always 100% correct. So we have to validate. So we have to validate and compare against ground truth. And what I mean by ground truth is what any of us might see when we're actually watching the video. So we actually test every single app. We run the app. we induce different types of issues and different playback scenarios and test scenarios, and then we actually watch the video and make sure that the metrics coming from our SDK matches what we actually see on the screen. And what we see on the screen is the ground truth. So that's the second piece. And then the third piece is that we recognize that the devices that we're measuring are in the wild. They're consumer devices, they're not managed devices, and there will always be noise. So we've on the back end, and we've invested a lot to remove that noise, to automatically detect, identify where we see noise, where there are extraneous data points, and remove that noise so that it doesn't deviate from the underlying signals that exist in that data. And then the fourth piece is we realize that every streaming application now is a very complex piece of software. It's no longer a simple video player embedded on a website in JavaScript. It's a very complex piece of software that's evolving rapidly, that are being released every few weeks, every month. And so even if we got it right the first time, 3 months from now, the metrics can be wrong again, because there could be regression. Just as with any software, things can regress. So metric quality and accuracy can regress. So the fourth piece is continuously testing. So we've partnered with Tata actually to deploy metric testing into a test automation framework so that we can continuously test every app all the time. So if there is some regression, it gets caught. So those are the four pieces that we use together, we believe gets to a high quality of accuracy. And it's an area we're constantly looking at also to see how can we further improve that and further raise confidence into the accuracy of that data. Yeah.
So almost all of this is automated, is it?
Yeah, majority of it is. Some of it is still manual, and we are actually working to automate more and more of it. So I would say it's on the path of getting more automated. But we actually have a dedicated team that works directly with our customers to integrate, to test, and continuously validate. And then we're working to make that process more and more efficient. So we don't want to sacrifice quality for automation. So we have teams on it now, but at the same time, we're making that more efficient through automation so we can scale that process more.
Okay.
And just to add to Aditya's point, I think from the consumer side of it, and it's not just true for streaming data analytics, right? General analytics. Sometimes there is too much of data, and I was having a discussion like we should have certain sets published as golden data sets, right? This has been verified to be accurate. This gives me the right data, and there is a single source of truth which I can actually rely upon. I think that's where the accuracy of data on the other side, on the consumption side, does matter. Can I trust this? Can I trust this enough to actually make a decision? And that's where I think when you typically do a in-house build, that's where it takes some time to reach that particular kind of accuracy and maturity over there.
Yeah. And Prakash mentions the golden data and the trust internally for the business. There's also that issue that exists externally. So again, bringing in other businesses, other perspectives from around the world. For example, advertising-based businesses, they need to substantiate the quality of the ad delivery, for example, in front of brands and advertisers. So how do you do that? Right? With privacy, with everything happening around the world when it comes to accuracy, we want to have, publishers that are built on advertising be able to deliver census information, the highest quality data possible to a brand. But then how does the brand or agency believe that information? Who certifies it? Who verifies it? So we're also finding ourselves playing that role, not only as Prakash mentioned, for the internal teams to trust and make business decisions on, but now it's about actually substantiating and certifying or verifying for the advertising businesses in front of brands and agencies. So that's another trend we see happening. It all comes back to the accuracy of data.
Okay, interesting. Prakash, I wanted to ask you this. All of us know this. We are drowning in data. So all the data that you're getting from all the streaming data, how do you make it useful to grow your business?
To be frank, it's not even growing, right? It's when you look at it, the primary part of Byju's business strategy has been getting great content to the user, right? Where it's not about pure, I'm not watching just like I'm watching a movie, but part of it is, what is the learning efficacy of that content as well as great content. Now, one of the problems we have noticed is and I think it's general. People, you have very good networks now compared to, let's say, 5 years ago, but people are also have certain expectation. If I have great content, but the video, starting play time is, let's say, 5 seconds, I know for sure I'll see a huge drop off. Similar stuff for, when I'm playing a content, sometimes, things buffer, right? And buffering, we know for sure that causes drop off. And these are young kids. They are very impatient. They are like some of us, they haven't seen what is a modem, right? So they are quite impatient over there. So these are like critical business metrics, not just for growth, but for even engagement and learning too. Right? So these are certain things we do actually focus a lot on, so that we can acquire, not just acquire users, but even for retaining them. That's pretty important for us.
Okay, so when there is a buffering issue and all that, typically what you tell the user, how do you address
No,
it?
we do a couple of things, right? Let me give you probably a couple of examples. One is that we do have adaptive streaming. So I do want to give the best resolution possible, but we can adapt according to that. That is one. The second one is, if we know, for example, I was telling, you were asking about the ISP, what can I do? For example, we figured out a particular ISP combination with a particular CDN was causing that issue. And then we looked more into it and figured out the ISP had recently started giving switching to IPv6 and was causing certain issues. We could talk to the CDN partner, fix that issue. But if we hadn't measured that, and if we didn't know about the video start failures happening, we wouldn't have looked into this particular. The other one is actually talking to whoever is the other partners. It's not just the CDN, right? There are a bunch of other things that happens before we start playing a video. So looking at what is causing that. Identifying the issue is the quite important first step that we can do.
Absolutely. Yeah, James is pointing to this. Yeah, the
Yeah,
buffering.
I thought this data, would be relevant because as Prakash is describing it, I mean, we have, billions and billions of streams we've observed, and we've also observed empirically that the better the experience and engagement, the better, as you'd expect, the more engagement you get. Conversely, the less churn you get. So, I mean, quality of experience is directly related to the revenue for these businesses around the world, which is why this technology is so important. So I thought it'd be interesting, as Prakash was talking, to bring up this empirical data, which we're happy to share with folks.
Yeah. And this is true for us in other factors also. It's not just the existing users. So for example, we do give a trial period for the users. If the user experience is not good over there, they're not going to come back. They're not going to see the good content.
Very true.
Yeah, and then and the relationship, again, bringing in advertising-based businesses as well. The quality of experience on the ads matters just as much. Like what we're learning is that a poor ad delivery from a quality perspective can also cause churn on the business's core content. So there's doesn't matter what the content is at all, the quality of experience. Consumers expect a linear TV type quality experience these days when it comes to video.
And I want to add one more.
Okay. Sorry, go on, Aditya.
Yeah, I just want to add one more point here. I think this is an area, this area of identifying the key insight that where we can take an action to improve the experience, improve engagement, is an area where AI actually can play a larger role. We've been doing some work here, but we definitely feel that with all this immense data that's there, we need the systems, these tools to automatically find and highlight the issues that will have the biggest impact, that are impacting the audience the most. And even go further to say, here are the possible root causes that are causing this, because these are things that can be automated. And we've done some of that. We have one capability within the product called AI Alerts that automatically identifies and diagnoses issues. We're extending that, but I think AI, machine learning, and various techniques of AI, not just machine learning, but various techniques of AI can be applied here, both domain, AI systems that understand the domain, as well as just general machine learning that is more just data driven. I think both types of systems can really be applied here to improve that time to resolution, because that's the most important thing from an end user perspective. Is if there's an issue, issues happen. It is the open internet, they will happen, but how quickly can you respond and fix that issue is really the key metric here. And I think that's where AI can help.
Okay. Shilpa?
Yeah, Prakash, to bring you in, how do you build for global scale in streaming? What are some of the building blocks?
Yeah, so a few things, right? First, we were purely focused on the app itself. So it's initially when we started, to be frank, it was nothing more than, hey, you have some video streaming, that's about it. But there are a lot of insights we could actually gather on. Everything from what is the right content to actually show to the user. Different geographies require different content, so we had to actually build different content itself for that. The other part of it is from the technical point of view, giving our in-house team to actually quickly iterate upon what kind of content we have to do, etc. There too, a bunch of metrics from the technical side were pretty important, right? For example, we could give them direct feedback on, hey, we do see that certain kind of content, most of the users actually complete that particular content, whereas in certain others, we are not seeing that same quality. Giving objective feedback to the content creators itself, help them actually figure out what is the right content, how should we mix it up, all of that over there. So that was one set of challenges. Initially, when we started, we were only in India, and then we were in Middle East. Every time we moved a geography, we used to have certain hiccups in the beginning. So that's where, measuring, and not just streaming data, but the whole product metrics, figuring out what works over there is quite important. Just like any other content, it's all about, iteratively figuring out, what is the problem, fix that, and then you encounter the next one. Keep doing that all the time.
Yeah, it must be quite a challenge. Yeah. So, Aditya, I guess real-time data is absolutely important in streaming, right?
Yeah, yes, it is. And that's real time has been one of our key focus right from the start. In a way, it actually goes back to why we started Conviva in the first place, which is when you compare streaming to what was there before broadcast TV. In broadcast television, the broadcaster had full control. You controlled all the network, the encoding all the way to the network, including the set-top box, if it's a cable or type delivery. When you go to streaming, you lose all the control. As a publisher of streaming content, you control the encoder and you control the app. You don't control anything in between. The entire network, the CDNs, the ISPs, nothing is in your control. So now when you go from this with this dramatic switch, obviously there are a lot of benefits with OTT, which I think we all understand, but this is the challenge, the fundamental challenge is you don't have control anymore in how video is delivered. And so when we looked at that problem, our solution to that, I believe the way to bring back some level of control is through data, is by measuring, having real-time visibility, and this is where real-time comes in. It actually comes back to control theory. It's if you have real-time visibility into what's happening in the wild, real-time meaning right now within seconds, then you can use that data to actually optimize. And if you can do that in a tight feedback loop, then you can bring back some level of control. And we've built in multiple feedback loops into the platform. One is to provide real-time visibility into the operators of the streaming platform. So the operations teams can see in real time what the viewers are seeing, get real-time alerts into what's happening, diagnose issues, take actions. And that will be in the order of minutes, maybe tens of minutes, because there's going to be human in the loop. The second feedback loop we built is an automated feedback loop where certain types of actions can be fully automated. And one example type of action is the decision of which CDN to use to stream the video to a viewer. And many publishers are multi-CDN now. And that means you have a decision. You can, for each individual viewer, depending on which city they're on, which ISP they're on, which device they're on, which content they're viewing, you can decide which CDN to connect them to, which will determine which path they use in the network at that point in time. And if you have real-time data about the network in terms of the quality of streaming that the network will deliver to that viewer, you can optimize and decide which one to send that viewer to based on the current performance. And so that's another example where real-time data can automatically optimize the viewer experience even before human comes into the loop to make any decision. So those are examples, but that's really fundamental to I think everything that's needed to get to high quality experience.
Okay.
Yeah, Yeah, James, coming to you, and then Prakash can also chime in. Can we align OTT streaming business on a single source of data?
Yeah, I think this is one of the great opportunities in streaming, just period, right? When we think about mainly the web evolution, there were so many different entities involved. Often the businesses that first went onto the web, many of these first businesses and that evolution needed a bunch of third parties. They didn't necessarily have full control of the data. They didn't necessarily have full control of the customer experience, right? Here with streaming now, I think we've learned a lot of these lessons, even lessons around data privacy, data protection, control, as Aditya put it. So for me, the streaming, revolution, we'll call it, offers a reset on all that. And Prakash mentioned it earlier about going back to this golden data concept, right? He's in control of the data, accurate data in real time, and that data, right, is actually following the journey of his customer from when they engage to how they're consuming the content. Where do they go to consume other forms of content after that? It's all connected. And so his technology team, his marketing team, in the case of businesses built on advertising, the advertising team, they're all seeing that same view of census level accurate data and running the business accordingly. Think about that. It sounds so simple, but that is a radical shift in how businesses are run on technology, if you will, on digital technology. And so that I think is one of the fundamentally exciting things about streaming. Prakash, you can add to that in your own experience, but I wanted to bring that to light.
Yeah. So I think yes, you have covered most of it. But to be frank, from a consumer side, I think one of the first questions whenever somebody talks about a new geography is typically related to, what is the data protection? What is the data privacy? That's become quite important now. Like especially for EdTech business, right? The moment we were looking at US, COPA compliance. If you are looking at Europe, it's GDPR. So part of it is from that particular perspective too, when we select a partner, and this is true for generally any kind of data. And knowing that that is taken care of is like, okay, one huge tick mark over there.
I'm muted. Oh, sorry. Yeah, a lot of audience questions coming in, but before that, let me ask you all three of you this one question. What is one bold prediction on the future of OTT streaming? Aditya, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think one thing that is going to change a lot is 5G rolling out. I think that will open up viewing, a vastly different and broader viewing patterns and much richer experiences on the mobile environment. And I know in India and largely in Asia, mobile is already the dominant form in many ways of streaming content. I think in the rest of the world, that's not actually the case. It's still broadband, connected to your subscription, broadband subscription at home, fiber to the home or broadband cable. I think 5G will change worldwide. I think the bandwidth, the low latency that 5G will bring, I think will introduce new forms of content that can be streamed and much richer forms of content. So we'll see, I think, a shift overall as that rolls out.
Okay, Prakash.
Well, I think there are a bunch of different forms of content. I think people are excited about VR, etc. From the EdTech sector, I think one of the things, and I think that's happening in a bunch of them, where video is no longer just a passive viewing experience, it's more interactive. One simple thing we are actually focusing on, even the EdTech sector now, is instead of having a 10-minute, 20-minute content where I'm passively watching, can I interact with it? Based on that, can I actually take you through a different path in the video itself, right? Say, for example, if I explain a concept, if I think that you understood it through some interactive mechanism, can I actually move you to another part of the video where you don't feel like, why are you repeating it? Whereas some other user might have certain different content if we think that he still has to understand certain things. I think interactivity will come. It has been experimented, I think, a couple of times. I think Netflix experimented with Bandersnatch, if I'm not wrong. That was the name. Okay. So something similar, but I think we are going to see that in more and more places where interactivity is there. And second one is definitely like James was mentioning, right? We saw a huge growth. I don't think it's going to go away. At least in EdTech sector, people are now very comfortable to the idea that you can actually learn from screens. You can learn from live classes. You can learn using video on demand, and that has been throughout everywhere, right? Right from the first grade till even some of the post degree courses, people are doing that. I think that's going to happen. The consumption is not going to die off.
Yeah, fascinating. James?
Yeah, and I think that those two trends kind of come together in my mind. I mean, I think my bold prediction is I think the reemergence, if you will, of the most premium high quality publishers in the world. I think we had a period of time where there was aggregation and there was, a centralization of content often, and whether it was social, the Googles of the world, the Facebooks of the world, other entities like that. I think you have now the opportunity for premium businesses, premium publishers, premium content, like Byju's, to go direct to consumers and viewers. And I think the consumers want this badly at this point. They really value that. And so you're going to have new businesses being built, but you're also going to have a lot of premium players, Times of India, in a position to directly stream and rebuild sort of their business directly with customers without the interference of some of these third parties that I think shadowed web technology, right? So I think that to me is very exciting, and I wanted to reiterate that point. Yeah.
Okay, great. This is the multiple audience question. Shilpa, you want to start?
Yeah, this question is from Shweta Chinta. To make best use of the analytics and implement the suggestions real time, the product has to be built keeping this in mind. At what stage of the product that Conviva comes in?
Aditya, you got that?
Yeah, I can, and probably Prakash can add a really good insight also. So what we've seen is all the way from the initial launch of a new service through the full operation. So the launch is, of course, a very important time in a new streaming service lifetime. And so our products have been used right from that time to know exactly what's happening from day one of launch. And even in some cases before, like in beta testing, before it really goes live to a larger audience, just to see in real time what happens there. So usually we see from there beta testing of a new streaming service, the day one launch, and then kind of throughout the lifetime of that service after that. And there are different uses in those different periods. And then once it's live, we see an evolution of uses. In the first several months, it's usually about just continuously fixing various issues, because there are always going to be issues, hiccups in that first month after launch. Then it goes into, now it's steady state, it's working. Now, how do we scale it as the audience grows? Then from there, it goes to, now how do we achieve the best experience compared to everyone else? How do we benchmark ourselves and get better than everyone else in the market? And that may be a multi-year journey at that point. So it goes in phases, but we really see a broad usage across that.
Yeah, so from my perspective, one of the interesting part was that I don't need to majorly change my app. There is an SDK, which is a drop-in, and I can use it within no time, right? We went through one journey, but if you look at it now, almost every single thing that we do, we rely on data to figure out how to set up even the roadmap or how to proceed. If I'm doing it again, probably I'll start on the first day itself.
Okay, I have this question from Ramesh Prabhu. How does Conviva ensure that the analytics and insights can be understood by all stakeholders to implement tangible changes?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in terms of the stakeholders, so we really we started with focusing on operations teams, the tech ops teams that are running the service. Then from there expanded more to engineering and product management, and then even to the technology executives, and most recently to marketing and advertising on the business side. And really I think it comes to a couple of things. One is designing a user interface with the workflows that make sense to that particular type of stakeholder, that type of user. The tech ops teams want to see things and drill into data in very different ways than a marketer. So first is just thinking about that from the user experience design of the product and the workflow. And the second is the kind of KPIs. And one recent thing that we built is we built a new KPI called SPI, Streaming Performance Index. This is a single KPI that captures all the different factors of streaming experience in one number. It basically shows the percent of viewers that had a high quality experience across everything that could happen, poor bitrate, buffering, everything, failures. And so while the tech ops teams might want to see the individual metrics in a lot of detail, the executives, I want to see what's the SPI, what's our SPI, and how do I that benchmark against everyone else in the industry, just so we have the top level view. And of course, that's connected to the deeper metrics. So I think the KPIs and the UX workflow that's targeted to different types of stakeholders is how we see addressing that. But the other last point there is it all has to be built on the same underlying data set and platform, so it's consistent. So different people aren't getting different types of conclusions.
One thing I'll add to that is just coming from a marketer advertiser kind of lens, more so than just technology lens. As Aditya described, it's all this common data platform with the same information organized in ways that make sense for that particular user, marketer, advertiser, technologist. But one of the, I think, key things is the open data strategy around it. So what we call stream data as a service. Sometimes companies don't want to live in our applications, and that's okay. That data may be more useful in some sort of data lake you're creating because you want to combine it with other data. So I think that open data strategy is a really, really important part of that. And that's a little bit further along in the journey that I think both Prakash and Aditya outlined when asked about how you deploy this type of technology. But when you get to the more advanced stages, taking this data, combining it with your CRM data, if you're a marketer, incredibly valuable use case there. You can imagine how you would leverage that. And so that open data strategy and stream data as a service facilitates the utility of the data in amazing ways.
Okay.
Yeah, we have this question from Vishnu Vimal. 3D in home video fizzled out because of poor response from consumers. Any chance of 3D coming back through OTT? And what technology hardware would be required for this?
Interesting.
Prakash was talking about VR and AR and all that, no?
Yeah, I think to be frank, more than the technology part, definitely the technology has to be there. I think it's, I've seen few experiences which actually do that. For example, walking through a street where I could actually move and, see in real time changes happening. That has to be there. I think one particular piece missing over this great content. Once that is there, I don't see too much of an issue for people moving into that. And it's the same story repeating again and again, right? We had a lot of buzzword around AR. All it took was for the, Pokemon Go, and suddenly you had like 150 million users using it every day. I think it's just waiting for the right content, how to wrap it, what's a good format. I don't think the requirements for a 3D kind of streaming is so different from the hardware side. I've seen few of the examples for that. So I don't think it's mostly to do with the technology platform, but people figuring out how to get a good content which suits this particular thing. And it has been true even for 3D movies. I think it's almost like 60 years now. Every 10 years, somebody says, "Oh, this is the year of 3D movies." I think it's just finding the right content, right package, and right business model for that.
Okay. James, Aditya, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's a good point. Less a technology issue, more of a content issue. I think that's a great response.
Okay. I have this question. Actually, Prakash had kind of answered this earlier, but in case any one of you wants to add to this is from Samshri Holi asking, how do analytics help content creators improve their monetization? Do platforms share these insights with creators? I think Prakash did mention that you do share.
I mentioned one part of it because we don't do the AVOD, the advertising based video on demand, but we do share some of the content, right? Say, for example, we created some new content. One of the key insights, what we look at is, how do people watch this? Do they actually complete that content or they are dropping off? right? What percentage of what kind of users drop off? If we can figure that, we directly give feedback to them saying, hey, I do definitely see issues with this particular pieces of content. I can't, if it is a content-based issue, sometimes I may not be able to tell what is the issue, but at least can prioritize which are the things that we have to look at. And it's kind of an iterative process. Probably James can tell more about the other pieces over.
Yeah, I mean, so it kind of goes back to the earlier conversation is there's a tremendous data asset available to marketers and content creators, right? To know for people who consume this type of content, where did they come from, right? From what social media sources? Was it from another piece of content I provided? So where's their relationships I might not have expected between, in terms of the content consumption? How do I then build on that knowledge to create segments, right? Or in the world of, publishing, a tune-in campaign is what we call it. So I noticed that people who love this content also, tend to like this content, right? And you start to form those relationships. You see those relationships through the data. They're very, very visible and plotted out. And then you're able to build a segmentation and a strategy to go out and connect with those consumers and viewers. So this use case of marketing and content and how I grow and engage my audience is one that's very, very well developed and built out within the platform. So something we help with every single day all around the world.
Just to add to that, the other factor over there is figuring out how long can I engage, right? Again, trying to come back to the education sector. Initially, we used to do 30-minute content, and it was pretty obvious that that's not working because students don't have that attention span. But how do I figure out what is the right amount for that? Some of those aspects you can do only when you get those insights from the data. If you ask me versus James, we may decide on totally different numbers. You can't arrive at those numbers purely from anecdotal evidence. It has to be based on the overall data as a whole for your audience. And there also you may actually segment them differently.
Yeah, the device, of course, to your point, the device plays a huge role in that. You see a direct relationship in terms of the larger the screen, the more likely for them to spend more time with the content. It makes sense, but and you can say that generally, but to know like this is the optimal length of the content for people on, for example, a mobile phone, versus when I notice they're in front of a large screen TV, I can serve up or offer much longer form content. So that's a great example of a very material, practical set of knowledge and quantification that can really impact your content engagement. So yeah, that's a really good point that Prakash makes.
Great. Shilpa, it's almost out of time. Do you have any questions?
No, Sujit.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Any concluding comments? Aditya, Prakash, James, anything that you want to make?
Thank you. It's exciting to have talked to everyone, and thanks to especially Prakash. Really appreciate him sharing his time. I mean, a CTO of a company like Byju's, so I want to thank him for sure.
Anytime. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks. Again, I don't know if Conviva is analyzing our video stream. I don't know. Suddenly, the last 2 minutes, twice it dropped off. I don't know what happened. I don't know where the problem lies. Maybe Conviva's analytics should.
Yeah, maybe
help me understand where that
maybe
is.
Maybe we can help you, Sujit. Yeah.
A great discussion. Fascinating technologies emerging. Yeah, this is going to be the future, I'm sure. So thanks a lot to all of you. Thanks to Conviva for partnering with us. Thanks a lot, Prakash. And happy Engineers Day to all of you. This is Engineers Day in India today.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
What?
September 15th. We had last century, we had this engineer called M. Visvesvaraya who built a lot of these dams and big projects. And in his honor, this September 15th is Engineers Day. So Yeah, all of you are engineering some fascinating solutions. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
And if I will mention anyone listening in, a lot of this data we aggregate and freely share in quarterly reports. So the recent state of streaming in Asia Pacific, go download it. It's really amazing data collected from all over the world, giving insights around this. So I'll share this with your audience. We'll also send it along as a thank you for those who attended. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You.
Bye.
Bye.